everyone who's come in person and found the building, which I know is quite the challenge if you haven't been here. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really love hosting people in our space, and it's really lovely to see so many human faces again after a long remote working period for us. So I'm Gabby Rosano. I'm the Executive Director of OpenUp, and I'm very, very happy to host everybody today, where we launch the Digital Democracy Innovation in Sub-Saharan Africa Fund. And so I'll be just introducing it to you in the easiest way I can, and then we'll open up for questions after that. For our online guests, we will be taking questions in the chat, and for everybody in the room, you can just put your hand up when you want. But, you know, we're also always available after this to answer any questions that anybody may have. Could we start? Next. So just as a very high-level introduction before I get into some of the background, what I'm going to call the DDISA is a fund available to digital democracy innovators in certain sub-Saharan African countries. We have two tiers of grants available, a tier 1 and a tier 2 grant. Tier 1 is 45,000 Rand, tier 2 is 85,000 Rand. The dollar equivalents, I think 85,000 Rand is about, it's $5,000, yeah. It doesn't help. The political situation doesn't help with my equivalents at the moment. But the program is designed not just to give these mini grants, but also to provide a variety of ecosystemic support to help people digitally innovate in response to democracy crises in sub-Saharan Africa. If we could move on. So just by way of background, the DDISA program, next slide please, forms part of a global initiative. It's EU funded, but there are sub-regional representations across across 7 sub-regions. We have Latin American partners, we have a MENA partner. And the idea is that each region is implementing its own forms of support in response to our own problems, our own context, and our own kinds of digital and data capacities, because that's very, very different across the regions, as are the priorities of what democracy or what digital democracy might need to look like. Next slide, please. So the implementing partners for the sub-Saharan African region are 3 organizations. We're all represented here today. We have our colleagues over there from the Civic Tech Innovation Network, Katlejo colleagues, based in Joburg. The Civic Tech Innovation Network has been working for many years as a network to bring together the civic technology community. Then we have our partners from Wits Enterprise, Deputy and Ronnie, and Wits Enterprise are going to be leading on the financial resourcing. They are a business institute related to the University of Witwatersrand, and they have a long history of both financial and business support in the ecosystem. And so we're really grateful to have them on board as well. And then we're OpenUp, represented by, I'm embarrassed by how many people in there we all are, who are my wonderful team. And we will be leading on the non-financial support to try and provide the kind of broad digital support that might be necessary to make these projects work. These projects are envisioned for 3 months. They are short projects, but we are hoping to build up a community of people that lasts for a lot longer than that. And I know in the non-profit sector, in particular in South Africa and throughout the region, we're constantly trying to build networks. There's always like a new idea to build a network. And part of the reason why that is because that's what we need, you know. And the fact that we continue to have challenges in building those networks has a lot to do with the, you know, kind of structural impediments put in the way of building those networks that we're very conscious of. But I don't think that the goal should change. And the goal is to try and drive innovation in a way that means that people can get better democratic and social outcomes for the people that they serve. And we hope that this mechanism can at least contribute in slight to that goal. Next slide, please. So just so you know the kind of process that was behind it, we've been involved in designing this mechanism over about 1.5 years. That process was originally based on some prototyping we did with a community of about 80 organizations from across the region. We've also slowly built up a database of organizations, of over 200 organizations, to try and get an idea of what people need, what kind of support would be of value. And it's through that prototyping mechanism that we actually designed what this mechanism will look like. Then we obviously went through, some of the the normal back and forth that happens from the funding wing of this process. But I think what we've designed is something that was, at least as best as it could be, co-created over the years time. Next slide, please. So why are we doing this? And I just thought I'd touch on in brief, and I won't give you a lecture, on the context in which we understand these projects to be initiated. And a lot of this is based on some of the research and stuff we did during prototyping. Next slide, please. The Sub-Saharan African region is really defined by digital inequality. That digital and data inequality is represented along a whole lot of axes. People have different access to internet. People have a variety of access to data. Then there are also inequalities in relation to capacities, both in capacities to understand and use technology, but also in the capacities to implement that technology in our work and what we do. And those differences are based on a whole lot of things. But those inequalities are a particular kind of context. How do you introduce solutions across such a spectrum of variance? And one of the ways to do that is to try and support a broad ecosystem that can at least meet some of the different needs of all these kinds of capacities and inequalities and access differentials. There's a lot of very good work done on what digital inequality looks like, in terms of gender, in terms of race, in terms of income, in terms of rural urban spaces. All those things are a feature of our digital and data inequalities. But at the same time, we have a very active civil society sector, I think, and also research suggests, across the Sub-Saharan African region. And I think what is sometimes underestimated is how the nonprofit and civic communities are a vital part of our economies, and are not just in terms of who they employ, but in terms of how they meet the needs of communities in very direct ways. So we have this opportunity of an expansive community of people doing very good work, also within the democracy context, but beyond that. And I think that's always an opportunity in which, to funnel resourcing. At the same time, there are increasing constraints, political and sometimes economic, or very much economic constraints on civil society across the Sub-Saharan African region. Our partners at CIVICUS, who are leading on the digital democracy, the DDI globally, have something called the CIVICUS Monitor, and that has been tracking, a lot of the threats to the civic space that have increased over time. We see, there is also a global context, partially which is born of, constraints to democracy, but also just civic space more directly. And that's something we're very, very conscious of. And at the same time, there is a lot of inequality in the direct investment into technologies and data in the African context. And that really does impact people's ability to move in this space. Next slide, please. So when we were looking at some of the organizations that we worked with, there are different ways of measuring people's digital and data capacities. And I think one of the most interesting things about all the organizations we looked at is there's just, again, such variety. It's not that you have like a lot of organizations that are very digitally advanced and a lot of organizations that are nowhere, but that we have an ecosystem that's very spread, although, as we say, the inequalities are more pronounced. And that, again, is actually an opportunity because it means that there is an ecosystem available that could lend support to one another to build each other's capacities. Next slide, please. And I think what's interesting in terms of considering directly on resource constraints, which I think certainly people from the nonprofit space are very familiar with, but also our partners in the social entrepreneurship space will be familiar with, is that I think there is a connection between the economic and resource constraints that organizations have and their ability to innovate. And so I think that there are a lot of very neat data and digital problems that come up just by not having sufficient organizational resources in order to finance those kinds of innovations. So I think you have a big ecosystem of people who want to innovate, and it's often the economic resources with the certain human resources that limit the ability to do so. Next slide, please. And so this is just a reflection on some of the kinds of support that people wanted to see, and we're hoping that these are reflected in some of the non-financial resources we will be making available to those beneficiaries who are successful. Next slide, please. All right, what we are offering. Next slide, please. So we built it around 4 main kinds of efforts. We hope to empower people with both the financial and the non-financial resources. We hope to support their ability to innovate. We hope to connect people. And ultimately, we hope to find ways to sustain this outside of this project period. But we're all looking for ways to sustain our activities, and hopefully we can think of some very creative ideas together to do that. But we are also looking at other financial and funding streams to bring into this program to try and extend it outside the year. But currently it is a year program. Next slide, please. Small grants, short time, big bonding. That's the goal. And we really hope that we can at least foster and incubate little nuggets of data and digital innovation within organizations. But we want to foster these data and digital gains within activities that people are already doing. There is so much good work already being done, and there is no need to create anything new. I think there is a lot of opportunity to build on all the stuff that everybody's already doing and see the little ways that we might be able to amplify that work through some data and digital support. Next slide, please. So the way we're going to run it is over 2 cohorts. Each month, we will be benefiting 100 organizations across the Sub-Saharan African region. So again, short but big bonding. We're looking forward to supporting you all during that period. The financial and non-financial support is designed to work together. We will be doing a comprehensive monitoring and impact monitoring. And part of the goal is that we do a lot of that work to feed back to you so that you can use that in your own sustainability exercises and in your own growth of your projects. We also have strategies for regionalization. So obviously all the organizations who are currently implementing, we are very conscious, are based in South Africa, but the Civic Tech Innovation Network has its own group of regional ambassadors across the Sub-Saharan African region, and in fact across the African region. And those regional ambassadors will be helping us to provide kinds of regional mentoring to our beneficiaries, and hopefully being able to connect, our partners that in the diaspora to the resources and networks that are relevant to them across SSA. Next slide, please. So in building up the kinds of support we envision, one of the things we hope to do is just, instead of trying to widen the pool too much of who we seek to support, we try and enrich the kinds of support that are available to the 100 beneficiaries that we have in the year. And we're hoping that through so OpenUp consistently uses user research and user-centered design in every activity that we do. We will be deploying that in this project, and the goal is that through getting to know our beneficiaries very well, we can better design the resourcing that's available to them in the time that we have. Next slide, please. I blame Matt in his slide design. No, you're shaking your head. Then whose fault is this? Well, I know what it is. No, I'm kidding. So another part of the goal is to open up the resourcing. So while we will have 100 beneficiaries, we obviously are an open first organization on every level. The goal is to both advance open source technologies, but also advance open knowledge. And so during the activities, we'll be creating resources that will largely be open resources available to anyone within the community and not just the beneficiaries, which also means we welcome, any of our partners who want to share resources within these communities to share it with us. We have seen profound value in opening up knowledge and information for our communities, and we will continue that during these activities. Next slide, please. And the other goal is, as I said, to meet people where they are, which is where a lot of the user research will come in. The goal is we understand the limitations of the financial resourcing. We understand the limitations of the time constraints. The goal is to build a community of people who all contribute to each other and are able to support each other in, profound ways. And one of the ways we commit to doing that is to trying to make everything as simple as humanly possible. I don't think that any of our partners, no one has too much capacity really at the moment, and we appreciate that very much. Next slide, please. So what we hope to create eventually is a coalesced community of digital democracy innovators. And what we are committing to as organizations, I think, is that even outside the funding period, we are committed to a vision of Sub-Saharan African digital democracy innovators, and we hope to build that however we can. Next slide, please. How to apply? This is the more straightforward stuff. We have a website that is currently live. Next slide, please. We have to target some priority countries in this round. These are the 40 countries that are being targeted based on requirements. And all this information is available on the website as well. South Africa's there, so that's good. But other countries, we're not just about South Africa. Very much not. Next slide, please. So what are the types of projects we're looking for? I understand that terms like innovation, even democracy, these are contested terms. But really, we're looking for projects that make sense for the grant amounts and for the 3-month impact window. So we want to see what you think is feasible as an impact pathway in those 3 months. But it can be any matter of things that, advance digital democracy, whether that's advancing digital rights issues, whether that's advancing democracy issues with data and digital technologies, whether that's a data collection project within your community that allows them to better target their local officials, whether that's embedding a software service within your beneficiary communities to get a better sense of what they need. These are all ways that data and digital technologies might advance democracy and digital democracy, and we're open to all of them. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we do have, and again on the website we have FAQs, and in those FAQs you can see the matrices, the decision-making matrices for each of the tiers. So there is a lot of information about how we will score projects and on how those projects will be scored. So I won't bore you to death with those. But the eligibility for tier 1 are basically that you are, within a relevant Sub-Saharan African country, that you've completed the form. Sorry. And it will be support available for those who are struggling to complete forms and things like that. We understand the digital context in which people work. We also understand that a lot of our materials currently are in English. And so please do reach out if there are any accessibility challenges you're having in trying to apply under these grants. We do ask for a minimum of a year's experience in the sector for tier 1 grants, but other than that, you just need to show an innovation component and, a focus on digital democracy or civic participation. So this is what the matrix for the tier 1 grants looks like. It's 2 pages, but we look at the impact potential, the innovation approach, capacity. Next slide, please. How you plan on engaging on the non-financial support, sustainability, and budget reasonableness. On the tier 2 grants, which are slightly more, we do look for a minimum annual income of an organization of R1 million. Someone will have to do the dollar conversion for me. I don't know what that is. But that's just to indicate that you have the capacity to implement over the 3 months. But we are open across the tier 1 and tier 2 grants to people applying under fiscal sponsorships. And there is some guidance on the website about what that looks like, but we're very aware that there is quite a variety of ways that organizations are associated. There are quite a variety of ways that people, are able to facilitate income given their context. And so there is guidance in our materials on how that might be able to work. Next slide. And these are this is the matrix for the tier 2 grants. Next slide. No worries. Thank you. Okay. I seem to have lost the slide on the kinds of non-financial support that are available, but I know what it is, so I'm going to tell you without that slide. And again, it's in my beautifully designed FAQs. But we will have a data and innovation desk available to beneficiaries. That means when you have struggles with queries on innovation or there's a data challenge that you have, we are available. My highly skilled team are available to provide that support to you. We will also be doing workshops, virtual workshops for beneficiaries, and I think open to the community at large on different kinds of data and digital capacity issues. We're also very responsive to people talking about what they need. And I think we will, in those workshops, include things like organizational development, trying to connect people to sustainable fundraising and those kinds of things. And so there will be that kind of capacity building support available as well. There will be some funds available to participate in events. And we will also have 3 kinds of additional financial support available to our beneficiaries. There are emergency grants, which are available to those who are in some kind of an emergency position, and we have criteria for those. There are subscription grants, so that if you are a beneficiary, you will be able to pay for software subscriptions, separately, and we will have a pool of funds available for that. And we also have a Kira Meet Fund. And the goal of the Kira Meet Fund is that people can apply to support bringing their own communities together in relation to the work, obviously, but that doesn't need to be resourced by their main grants, because we understand the limitations of those. We will also be culminating in one kind of final event, and the final event, which is the Dragon's Den, which will be in November this year, if all goes according to plan. But, you know, even if it doesn't, the Dragon's Den event will be available to 5 of our beneficiary groups, and they will come to Cape Town to present their ideas. Hopefully we will have, you know, some also funding investment interest available at that event, and then they will not compete, but we'll join together, and there will be 2 awards available of additional funds for the beneficiaries who are able to pitch their projects in a way that's meaningful for them and their communities. So moving forward, we are opening applications today. Bear with us, everyone, during the first couple of days while we see how our application forms do under pressure. But we will close applications ostensibly at this stage on the 15th of April, and that's for the first cohort. We will then open a second round of funding at the end of June, with the goal that reporting on that funding happens at the end of October. And then the broad range of support through our non-financial mechanism will be available throughout the year period, culminating in our November event, hopefully. So please do have a look at the website. And now I think, unless something else happens, I'll open the floor to any questions, and online if there are any questions. Thank you. Very rapid. Oh. Thank you. Thank you for validating me. Do we have any online questions? Okay. Joel has a question.
Thanks, Gabriela. It's a very exciting project. Are there any thematic areas that would be favored? You know, obviously within democracy, there are a whole bunch of areas that we could be looking at. Is there any preference, or is it sort of completely open?
I think there's a preference in the sense that it's sort of digital democracy or civic engagement. So there is a connection to kind of, not political activity, but, you know, democratic political activity. But outside of that, no. I mean, I think, you know, there are participation elements to a vast theme of work, you know, within climate, within, you know, gender-based violence. There are, you know, participatory activities, and I think we are very agnostic on that. You can see in the focus breakdown what we suggest, but really we are open to you telling us what the priorities for the region are. I don't think we feel like it's up to us.
And sorry, one more question. Can we share this in our networks? Would you like us to?
Please, I would love that. Okay. that would be ideal. Cool. You know, and we are actively exploring ways to create this kind of what I'd call incubation support for a broader range of groups outside of this funding stream. I mean, this is very much, you know, we've been working in the area for 10 years. I very much see that it is better to mainstream innovation within organizations than try and, you know, provide ad hoc technical external support. You know, it's just not financially sustainable for people. So we're very committed to trying to get this to work in the longer term. Yay! me.
Any restrictions to what you can spend the money on? Organizations spend money on?
They're not. I mean, I will have to get a more comprehensive response on the funding requirements, but we have a very simple financial reporting, like a finance template, but we are subject to EU restrictions, and we're just trying to find a way to make that palatable for smaller groups, also because of the grant amount. It is not human resourcing, obviously a big area of spend, and justifiably so. Software, although I'd encourage people to also, not necessarily over budget there, because there might be other, kinds of support available for that. And coalescing people, that's generally also an area where people need financial support. So, but yeah. Okay, if there are no questions online, then what I'll do is let our online participants go, I think. And I thank everybody online for being so patient. I know how hard it is to deal with virtual presentations, and you didn't get any of the snacks. So, I'm sorry. So thanks very much. And if we can close out that. Thank you.